THiNK International, bringing you the best and brightest leaders of our generation. I'm here with Pastor Mark Driscoll from Mars Hill. How you doing?
Good, buddy. Doing very good.
You just got done finishing a session here at Calibrate. Phenomenal. Did you have a good time?
Yeah, it was fun. It was good. An easy commute, just a short drive. Love that.
Drive.
No airplane trip. Very simple. Love that.
Mars Hill is in a great state of growth right now. For the past years, you guys have been doing different campuses, multi-site, as well as planning churches. You just opened one in the U District area of Seattle, and your largest opening attendance ever. How strategic have you been at Mars Hill about this? Has it been about this since the beginning, or?
Yeah, when we first started, to be honest with you, I started very poor. I didn't get a salary for the first 3 years. We started maybe 100 opening nights, something like that, and then it went down to 50 or 60. So to be honest with you, if it could have gotten to a few hundred and I could have went full time, I would have thought that would have been really successful, and I would have been pretty stoked about that. So I wasn't envisioning, you hope for things and pray for things, but you don't anticipate certain things. And God's been really gracious to us. So yeah, the multi-site for us came out of, we wanted to be in the city. The city essentially zoned out large churches. The only way to change that would have been at the time to sue the city, get in an adversarial relationship. We didn't want to do that, but we'd gone to 5 services in a larger facility, preaching 5 times an hour and 15 minutes a pop. We're turning hundreds of people away. We still can't get them all in the building. And it was either leave the city or go multi-site. And so we started multi-site a few years ago as an experiment. By God's grace, it's worked. And now 2/3 of the church is in campuses and not with me physically in the room on Sundays.
Wow. And it's working great. People are connecting to their campus pastors. And
yeah, we have campus pastors first among equals. They got their own pastoral team, bands, small groups, Sunday service. Everything is there. Everything is there except for me. I preach 75% of the time on video. The campus pastor will preach 25% of the time live, so 10 to 12 weeks a year. They're going to get everything Thanksgiving to the end of the year. They've got it all. I'm out.
Oh, wow.
I'm out.
Nice.
So I'm out for a month. And I was out for a month this summer. Attendance didn't budge. Giving didn't budge. Everything is fine. So I think we've got kind of best of both worlds by God's grace and some good leaders. We found that the giving and the small group participation and the serving is higher at the video campuses than where I preach live. Wow. The missionaries go to reach neighborhoods and the consumers come to see me.
So all the critics out there that say the church it would be built on your personality, your church statistics speak other.
Yeah, completely contradict that. And I would say as well, every church is really driven by the pastor's personality. Right. Some guys just have a little personality. That's all. But everybody they go, why do you go to that church? Because I like Pastor so-and-so.
That's true, right.
Well, like it's a bad thing? Well, if he loves Jesus and he's helping you, that's not a bad thing.
Right.
Yeah.
Right. How are you guys reaching one of the hardest to reach demographics, the young 20s single guys? Is it you think it's your preaching or?
I think it's a bunch of things. We've intentionally from the beginning targeted young men in their 20s who are single, which tend to be the least church demographic. College-educated single man in his 20s, least likely to go to church in America. Right now in our church, that's the biggest demographic. So we've intentionally gone after that. And I think we're slightly majority male. And the majority of those are single. But my thought is if we can get them trained, they didn't have a dad, they don't know what they're doing, they're adolescents, I call them boys who can shave, they're just sleeping with their girlfriend and playing video games and dorking around. So if I can get those guys, get them in a clinch and work on them a little bit, get them turned around, make them husbands, fathers, worshipers, then we could start to make some traction. So from the theming to the branding to the preaching to the leadership to the music to sometimes late night services because they get up at the crack of dinner to the whole deal. But we put them to work as well. Right. So we don't do a men's ministry. We don't do a singles ministry. We just get the guys, assault them, and put them to work.
So you guys are like a husband producing ministry for all the single Christian ladies out there. Go to Mars Hill.
Hundreds of weddings a year. Literally, hundreds of weddings a year. Yeah.
Wow. Now, you're not titled as the lead pastor. You're just the teaching pastor. How does that dynamic work in your church?
Yeah, I oversee preaching and vision, and then I've got 3 organizations. We've got the Resurgence, which is leadership development, a school, books, blogs, conferences. I've got a person who runs that, a pastor. Acts 29, our church planting network, is at about 350 churches in the U.S., and we're in 13 nations. We've got another pastor who runs that, and then there's the church, and there are 2 pastors. One oversees more the business side, the other oversees the ministry side. So I've got this executive leadership team, and I oversee preaching and vision as part of that team, but I don't run the church. I'm a really bad manager. And then it frees me up to preach, teach, develop leaders, write, those kind of things. So yeah, I'm not in any way actively leading and managing all the aspects of the organization. It's just too much. Yeah, last year, I think we had over 1,300 Sunday services.
Wow.
So you just start over 500 small groups. I mean, it's at the point where I blew myself out physically a few years ago and learned where my limits limits were and try to live within those.
Right. And now, how do you manage stress? How do you today? Because you had like doctor's orders, didn't you? Like stay away from some stuff.
Yeah, for me, it was getting a really good doctor. Paul had one. His doctor's name was Luke, and traveled with him. So I got a good doctor who was a Christian naturopath, and I take 40-some vitamins a day. I go in every other week for pure vitamins, bypass the liver right to the bloodstream, dietary requirements, sleep requirements. I've had to learn to really manage. I mean, all the way down to I'll check my blood pressure and pulse at certain points of the day. I mean, I'm really trying to finish well, and I just turned 40. Yeah. Don't turn 40, bro. It's no good. Cut back on the caffeine, just trying to live within the energy that God gives me and steward it well. And I still get a lot done, but yeah, sometimes I would use a bulldozer for something that took a shovel. I'd be a little too intense. Yeah, so.
When it comes to hugs in the church, are you side, frontal, or just not at all?
I am not a hugger, and if we're going to hug, if a guy, especially with a guy, like a full frontal hug is just like, that's just wrong on so many levels. So yeah, I'm not much of a hugger. I'll give a good handshake. And if a guy's a hugger, I'll do a shoulder bump, probably. One of those, yeah. Sort of more like an MMA clinch and then get out. Yeah, it's about as far as we're going to get.
That's great. Pastors and leaders experience a love-hate relationship with people all the time. People love them / hate them. It can wreck a lot of people. Now, you experience the love-hate relationship on a whole nother level. How do you suggest that pastors deal with that?
Yeah, I just got done talking about it. You have fans and you have foes, and they both idolize or demonize you. So your fans idolize you, foes demonize you, and then they tend to argue online. And so I think the key, though, is for those who idolize you as a leader, the person who comes up after saying, "That was the best sermon ever, you're amazing, I can't believe it," and it just gushes. You need to know that's not true. That's not true. They're probably going to leave the church next week and shiv me on the way out, And for the foes that are always criticizing, sometimes it's really their own, they've been spiritually abused, they've had hardship or pain, and you just smell like the dog that bit them. And so it's really not putting too much stock in either. But if you put stock in either, you're going to end up proud or depressed, or you're going to vacillate between the two.
Yeah.
Like, I'm awesome, I'm horrible, I'm awesome, I'm horrible.
Right.
And so the key is to surround yourself with some really godly, honest people who will give you real feedback, not just, adore you or assault you. And then, sort of let your repentance and your decision-making come out of that kind of honest feedback. But the fans and the foes, they tend not to have honest feedback. It's not very helpful.
You talk with pastors all across the nation and nations, travel extensively, and you speak cross-denominationally a lot. And what do you see happening in denominations and movements across America?
Yeah, I think, one is denominations aren't going away, but networks are clumping churches together across denominational lines. So going forward, I think you're going to still have denominations. Denominations provide things that networks don't, like theological education schools, funding, buildings. I mean, there's just a lot, and that's very helpful, especially for the church planners. But sometimes they can't provide things.
Right.
Certain collegiality, camaraderie, coaching that the networks do. So you're going to have both coexisting. And I think it's a really good thing. And then the networks can bring together people across denominational lines for mutual learning. We have these gifts to give and we have these gifts to receive. And as long as there's a little humility and a little discernment, like I want to receive, but I'm not going to just agree with everybody about everything, it ends up being really, really helpful. And I think even some of those things visibly are good for a region because they set a spiritual temperature. So like with Judah and I, Judah's a friend, I love him.
Yeah.
And he's preaching Jesus and people are getting saved. And that's a good thing.
Yeah.
So we don't have to agree on everything, but we agree on the stuff that really does matter, like the Bible and Jesus and heaven and hell and the big stuff. That's more than enough to build friendship around.
Right.
So I hope and I'm praying and seeing that the networks provide opportunities for friendships to be built to where you're not just engaging with people's ideas, but you're engaging with them.
In Acts 29, your guys' church planning network, the people on the board even have some different views theologically and whatnot. Is that correct?
Yeah, we are Reformed, we are complementarian, but within that we have 20-some denominations and networks. So we talk about closed-handed issues like the Bible and Jesus and kind of Reformed view of salvation, a certain government of male elders, and then we have open-handed issues on spiritual gifts or modes of baptism or eschatology or style. So it's every group's got to figure out, okay, what goes in this hand, what goes in this hand? And so for us, we have 20-some different networks and denominations involved in one church planting movement.
One last question. The 80s are back in full force.
Tragic to hear.
And
I didn't like them the first time.
well, you get to live through them again. And facial hair is a big thing. Even mustaches are back. So as well as tattoos are in. Really interesting time. Would you rather rock a Tom Selleck mustache for the rest of your life, or have an I Heart Tom Selleck full, like, 3/4 on your upper arm there, shoulder?
Boy, that's like, do you want to go on a date with Richard Simmons, or do you want to go on a date with Elton John? It's like, that's not exactly an awesome set of options.
No.
I'd rather kill myself. Yeah.
There it is. All right, so I appreciate it, Pastor Mark. Here we go.